Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soldera Markets. Today we're joined by Taavi Veskimägi. He is an ex-Estonian MP. He's also ex-Estonian Ministry of Finance. But most interestingly and relevant to energy, he was the CEO of Estonia's primary TSO called Elering, and he was also a member of the board of ENTSO-E, which is correct me if I'm wrong, but it fosters cooperation amongst the different TSOs in the European Union. Tavi, we're super excited to have you on the show and to learn everything we can about geos, the history of geos, where you see the market now, and how it relates to broader energy trends in Europe and Estonia. So, Tavi, welcome, and feel free to correct me if I got any part of that introduction wrong.
In case anybody doesn't know, so TSO is transmission system operator. It's the guys that control the grid. When Estlink 1 was severed a few weeks ago by the Russian ship, then TSO were the guys that, went to panic and started fixing it fast.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, yeah, I mean, my initial question is, it sounds like a huge amount of responsibility running the TSO for an entire nation. On top of that, I've heard that you were instrumental in actually activating geos as a tool inside Estonia. So can you talk us a little bit through the history of geos and what that was like trying to get them implemented?
Yeah, happy to do that. Once again, thank you very much for having me. If I'm going back when we started with geo introduction here in Estonia, that the basic idea was very much to bring more renewables to the market based on more market-driven approach. Because before that, we also supported here in Estonia renewables very much based on different grants and peaking tariffs. But the general concept behind to really incentivize and more granularly incentivize for renewable production and introduce the geos that basically exactly match this demand supply real time. And I'm very happy that the general market right now also moving that direction, give more precise locational signals and more precise time signals for the renewable producers, make new investments, really ramp up their production capacities. That I've always seen, because I'm very much a market-minded guy myself. Basically, when we liberalized the Estonian power market already back in 2011, much before many others, always been very much this kind of market view, and I very much see the geos exactly this kind of complementary tool for the power market, encourage more renewable producers market-wise come online.
For sure. And in terms of the landscape of geos at the time, was Estonia one of the first, or what did that look like? Were other countries implementing geos? I'm actually not too well versed on the history of geos, so if you could share any insights there, that would be great.
Definitely, we been one of the first DSOs who start to introduce the geos in Estonian power market. Definitely not the first one. Nordics started much earlier, and the association of the issue in Polis, where also Elering is the member, being established much before that. But anyway, I think at least in the region, we've been definitely this kind of first movers, and exactly based on the logic what I described beforehand. And I see that it also worked out like we really expected that time. That if you look the Estonian renewable production portfolio, then definitely most of 2024, the largest share of the produced energy already came from the renewable sources, from wind and solar. And I still believe that also geos has played quite a significant role to achieve this target.
I'd also like to add that I think Elering, you really brought this innovation mindset to Elering, and it still has the same edge, right? The hourly based guarantees of origin, which is the next step for guarantees of origin. Currently, guarantees of origin, they're based on month and then can be used throughout the years. But the regulators want to move to hourly based guarantees of origin. And Elering is one of the 5, now actually I think 6 countries, but they were one of the first that got into the group to start driving the hourly based guarantees of origin. And Elering has their own registry built, and they're really trying to stay ahead of the game over there. and being like the innovators and pilots to help us push this market to the next stage.
And I think it's very much, we should look at the wider context than if you 2011 liberalized the market and basically introduced the central data hub together with remote readers for all Estonian electricity consumers. And that respect, we definitely been one of the first countries who introduced this kind of central, exactly national-wise data hub, which really allows very easy and fast change of your balance provider and retail electricity seller. I think we also basically look this CEO introduction basically as a part of this wider package, how to incentivize, how to basically also give the consumers more power on the power market really because for me also GEO is not only the tracking tool, but also the basically consumer empowerment tool that consumers really know that which kind of electricity they consume from which sources, that there are no this kind of greenwashes, that we know that all basically electricity very much labeled, and I think that's also very much important for the consumer usability point of view.
I'm just looking here, it says that Elering became an independent TSO in 2009. Is that
Yes.
roughly the time of when you came on board? Could you speak a little bit to the
A
difference?
bit later, definitely a bit later, because as
Okay.
I described this granularity exactly that when European third energy package being passed and forced, we started 2009, and I believe the commission which unbundled Elering from that time main Estonian vertically integrated incumbent ST Energy. First, we established this kind of independent system operator, and we did it a way that basically both the system operation part and transmission part, basically we owned the high voltage transmission grid with interconnectors with other countries, as Stenver described. For instance, this S3 cables with Finland, that this was basically the first step to establish this kind of independent body who really lead all this market transformation. The second, we built the central data hub to really allow market liberalization process that consumers can very easily switch their energy and producer, because where we are coming from the past, and I think all Europe coming from that stage where there are large, mostly state-owned energy incumbents basically owned most of the market share as well. Right now, we are basically very liberal market, and exactly, I think if we are also touch this geo part, and then definitely there are different producers with different value propositions to their customers, and then some of them exactly also highlight this kind of clean content, very low CO2 footprint of their production portfolio, what they provide to the consumers. And I think this is a really, really important one. That we have a different products, different value propositions on the market, on the electricity market for the final customers. And basically the data hub, and after that, all which is related with the guarantees of origins as well. And right now, of course, we do this is not maybe the topic for today's discussion, but no, exactly February 2025, we make next very big leap. We basically desynchronize all Baltic power systems. It means also Latvia, Lithuania from the Russian power system. And of course, there are many other ingredients that what comes with that. But I think this being this kind of constant transition from 2008 basically up to next February 2025, when we desynchronize Baltic power grid from a Russian power system. And I think this is also consists those kind of measures what we did to enhance the renewable production here in Estonia.
This is a huge milestone for the Baltics. I remember when I was a kid in school, in high school, that was like more than 15 years ago. Then my parents and teachers and everybody were talking how we need to become energy independent and not be reliant on Russia. And it's quite exciting to see that happen now, right? So it's becoming a reality. And it's a huge move, like, because there's been a lot of work done to achieve that, connecting with all the Sweden and Finland and all these nations and making sure that the cables are there and we can like buy the electricity from all over Europe.
And by the way, I think it also has been very good for consumers because all those interconnectors also basically able to control quite long time, very efficiently energy prices here in the Baltics, not because those cables has been quite sufficient for transition flows between countries up to the moment where we noticed very high price peak for the emission trading allowances, and of course I think basically this is what we should look together. The one hand, the guarantees of origin, and another hand, the basically emission trading scheme allowances for the power producers when those prices are really went up. Of course, in past, most of the electricity produced here in Estonia came from the oil shale, and of course very efficiently these high allowance prices shut down electricity production from the oil shale sources, and of course it immediately caused the situation that those interconnectors what we built not sufficient, basically even bring more green energy from the Nordics, where the generation very much based on the hydro and wind and a bit nuclear as well. And currently we have a split between different price areas. But anyway, I think it basically a decade or so, we and Estonian consumers enjoy the very low, mostly renewable powered electricity supply thanks for those interconnects.
But what do you think that the desynchronization with Russia will do with the prices and like volatility on the energy markets in Estonia? Like, are the cables right now enough to cover the gaps, or do we need to build more of them? And like, where do you see this going?
I think this is really important to distinguish that we operate synchronously with a Russian power grid, but we never, time of last 2 decades, bought any energy from Russia. The frequency is the same, but no energy trading already, at least last 2 decades or so. It means that there are no impact for day ahead prices. Where this impact comes from, that definitely the Russian system operator mainly has regulated the frequency. Right now, we have to start to control frequency by our own. It means that we need more reserves, especially frequent containment reserves and frequency restoration reserves, the automatic frequency restoration reserves. And of course, those units are costly one, especially if we do not have so much conventional power generation left anymore. We have a more basically wind, solar-based power system. And if you do not have those conventional generators, which really can give you the frequent containment reserve and automatic frequency restoration reserve, you basically have to buy it. And most probably those reserves are coming from the gas-fired power plants. And as we know that gas-fired power plants are quite expensive one, it means that the main add-on cost coming from the frequency regulation part. And this is right now, I think the Estonian government made the right decision that it's not right now goes on the shoulders of the consumers, but Elering is going to cover this based on the income, what they have earned based on the bottlenecks between different price areas. This is some kind of mechanism which is in Europe in place, that the system operators earn money to reinforce the grid if there are bottlenecks, this kind of bottleneck fee, if there are bottlenecks between different price areas. And right now, Estonian government really incentivize Elering to use this money to cover this extra cost coming from the desynchronization due to more frequency reserve demand.
And that's the start of the frequency market that's coming, right? So
yeah, that's right. That's definitely right. And this is definitely something also interesting that how renewables and basically renewables based storage capacity is going to participate different markets, new markets which just get introduced for manual restoration reserves, automatic restoration reserves. Let's see that is definitely very much a new, very interesting market. What we see right now get off the ground here in the Baltics.
That's amazing. Just out of my own interest, is the frequency market also somehow connected to the rest of the Nordics? And how are the prices and frequency, how are they connected basically, and how do they impact each other?
Not directly, because we interconnected with the Nordics based on the direct current subsea cables. There are not the same frequency area in the Nordics. There are different frequency area, and we get the part of the continental Europe frequency area that we can exchange the frequency reserves with the continental Europe transmission system operators. But I think this is the main difference compared to the Russian power system and Central Europe power system. Russian system, it was a centrally controlled system, as most of stuff in former Soviet Union. It was centrally controlled by Moscow, but the continental Europe power system, that basically every single transmission system operator inside the same synchronous area basically has to control frequency and participate the frequency control inside control area. This is the major basically difference between those two, and definitely the responsibility of the system operator here in Estonia, same Latvia, Lithuania, basically much larger to keep lights on as it was in the past.
I'm curious. It sounds like to me, Estonia for a long time has been thinking about questions of grid resiliency. You have a long and contentious history with a very challenging, difficult, expansionary neighbor. So surely renewables have been part of the conversation for a very long time. And it feels to me like the rest of Europe only really kind of recently has the discussion of energy sovereignty and grid resiliency come into play. Like they've had the luxury of not having to think about it for a long time, right? So in that sense, was Estonia ahead of the curve?
Yeah, somehow we always know that basically if you look the history of last 1,000 years, then you always know that you must be well prepared, that you never know that what comes next. And definitely this kind of grid and system resilience and the independence has been the top priority for us. And we also talk with Denver, that Denver very well knows that this kind of risk assessment is in my blood, that I always basically look all through lenses of the risk assessment, and to get risk really mitigated and not keep them too high. Exactly. I think we have done this risk mitigation exercises last decade or so, definitely, to get rid of them, and definitely this desynchronization of exactly one of the risk mitigation measure, not somehow being in place where in Ukraine was when full-scale invasion, Putin war started against the Ukraine, and I've been happy to help Ukraine, also part of the support that time when we synchronized very fast manner Ukraine with the continental Europe power system, basically do it in advance. Of course, we hope that this kind of situation never be here in the Baltics, but that I think that the best way to really build the deterrence to be ready such situations, and definitely the energy resilience, energy security is a very large part of that, and definitely renewables play as a local energy source, because we have as I described, that historically Estonia produced most of its energy from the oil shale. This is quite the same as a brown coal, quite the same type of primary energy source, very polluting. Of course, we do not like to use it, and basically the alternatives are renewables, solar, wind, and also the hydrogen. Of course, basically produced by green electricity. But I think the green hydrogen is definitely a large opportunity for Estonia, because this is really fuel, what you can store, and this is really local fuel. That electricity, what you generate for the green hydrogen production is generated in Estonia, and of course water also. What we have, that this is also something what we should use even more here in Estonia to build more this kind of hydrogen economy and other derivatives around the hydrogen, ammonium, methanol, etc.
I guess speaking of energy future, green hydrogen is a very hot topic, right? Because it's considered one of the storage solutions. There recently came news that a lot of the green hydrogen projects were cancelled. Was that overblown, or what's the state there right now, and where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think that's correct. There are many projects, large scale projects are really cancelled all around Europe. And definitely, I think this brings us to very important discussion point right now, and it's related to the end customer demand, that which kind of and how strong is the end customer demand for the green energy, whichever type it is, from green electricity up to the green hydrogen. That this is really very much important point, that especially after Trump is back in the office, if US really withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, very much looking further more production from shale oil and gas resources in states, and if Europe also speak more about the competitiveness. I don't know, you had a chance to look the von der Leyen speech in Davos last week, but she also very much pointed out the competitiveness and not so much the Green Deal anymore, as we see this kind of rhetoric switch really between von der Leyen two commissions, previous and the current one. That this is something what we should really very closely follow. What is the base for the green transition right now? Basically, and I think that's the right one, to basically bring more European competitiveness on the plate, because otherwise, if we really stagnate it and we lose our competitiveness, there are huge consequences for elections. What we see, because inflation and unsatisfaction among the population is basically very key driver right now. It means that we even have to look more this kind of price market fit in that respect, that whatever we do around the clean sources, that there is a really this kind of price market fit as well. And I think for the onshore wind, this is definitely already there, that we know that the onshore wind is right now based on the marginal price, the lowest, basically, the power source. And this is, I think, where the market goes to. And I think in the Baltics, because we are not very much inhabitant in the region, that there are huge room for onshore wind as well. And I think this is what we should harvest first. There are no point to go offshore before we not utilize all onshore opportunity. There are also challenges, not in my backyard type of challenges still, but I think we should really overcome for cause of the wider public good.
Yeah. For us, this is a very interesting topic, because this is a question of where do the guarantees of origin prices go, right? If the renewable demand is stopping or reducing, then that can have big consequences on the guarantees of origin prices as well. There was a webinar done by Wait Analytics, which is a firm that specializes in guarantees of origin prices and forecasts. And they made a webinar where they painted a bullish outlook for the market. There's a couple of things. First, a lot of the solar investments have reduced in Europe last year, while at the same time, on the demand side, the cancellations have actually increased year on year. And even last year, they increased. And at the same time, now that the corporate sustainability reporting standards came out, they're expected to drive a lot more demand towards renewable energy, as a lot of corporates are looking to use renewable energy. Lots of government subsidies and like ESG requirements and investor pressure. Still, the private market wants you to use renewable energy in many places. So the cancellations and demand is expected to increase. But one big thing in that formula, which was not discussed by Wade this year, was green hydrogen. Because in the past, green hydrogen was advertised a lot as one of the big drivers of future guarantee of origin demand. But I guess now there's questions like how much will there actually be built green hydrogen? And it's an exciting topic.
Yeah, exactly. That this is green hydrogen, as green ammonium, green methanol. They are commodities and very much priced by Rotterdam port price, for instance. That there are really this kind of strong price points that. And the market are really there. I think more question concerning the input prices, because if you like to produce, for instance, the green ammonium, basically 70% of green ammonium price based on the electricity price. And I think this is exactly the issue, that what is the price of electricity. And the most or the largest issue that we have, especially in this region, and I think it's relevant for all Europe, that we have quite a lot of electricity, very cheap price available based on the solar and wind profiles. But we know that in our region, solar covers, I think, 11% of all hours, wind maybe 35, 37, depends. But if you like to run the large hydrogen production plant, for instance, you need the green baseload product, basically for all 8,760 hours per annum. And this is exactly this kind of weak point, that you couldn't basically ramp up, ramp down your hydrogen production based on only the solar wind profile. You need a baseload, but this baseload not available. But basically those hours where sun's not shining and wind not blowing, there are basically very high prices, and basically no one able to provide this green power purchase agreements to really, those guys like to fix their electricity price because they are so price sensitive. We say that we see many hours very low prices in the region, but same times there are still too many hours with too high price to produce market-based hydrogen or ammonium or methanol. Basically, I think for the future, what also I mentioned for electricity, that exactly that kind of price, the market fit, it maybe is more important if we talk about less Green Deal and more European competitiveness, and this is more under the political agenda. That I think this is maybe this kind of state of play, at least from my point of view right now, concerning the green hydrogen. But I think you really touched a very important point, and this is also all this which related to regulation and which kind of taxonomy are in place in Europe. And I think that's right now very much important. If I look those different initiatives, somehow echoing what coming from stage, and also based on this competitiveness agenda, that to basically also reduce the red tape for European businesses, especially for European SMEs. And right now, I think this is very delicate balancing act. To one hand, really reduce the red tape for and reporting for industry and for SMEs, but same time keep the sustainability goals. And basically, exactly as we started discussion, that GEOs are really great instrument to really disclosure of the source of the energy production, and that basically inform the customer, that we basically also keep this kind of full disclosure environment. Same time, basically reducing the red tape for European businesses. That I think this is something which still, or not still, growingly even, the basically in agenda of European Commission, European Parliament, the Council. This is what we should follow very, very closely right now.
Agreed, and like Europe should actually demand this outside Europe as well, or everything that's brought in to the Europe, to make sure that all the imported goods are following the same rules, and same standards. Otherwise, it will create uncompetitive environment internally and make the outside environment competitive.
Border carbon adjustment, which is in place, but I think not properly implemented. I agree very much that we should build level playing field for European businesses, but same time, of course, we understand that if we basically add on different tariffs, it means the higher price of different goods and products, and it might cause even more inflation, what we see right now in Europe. And this is at the same time also basically reduce the consumption power of European consumers. That this is pretty complex stuff, what is on the table right now, that how to really keep this sustainable agenda really alive and get the Green Deal and the decarbonization done, because this is definitely important for long run, not for only Europe, but for globally. And but same time, not to lose competitiveness, and we adapt to not lose European citizens back up European agenda for decarbonizing the whole economy.
Agreed.
I'm curious specifically when it comes to EU regulation. There's a lot of heat online that the only thing Europe leads in is regulation. In your opinion, in stuff like, say, energy, for example, how much of that is actually just the challenge of standardization, right? I mean, Europe's a huge continent. Some people are going to consider new standards that they have to adhere to as, red tape, whereas others are just going to see it as a way forward to get everybody on the same page, right? So that's my question, is how much of it is standardization? How much of it is kind of over-regulation?
I think a couple of times already mentioned time of this conversation that I'm very much a market-minded person and not so much maybe the regulations driven. That definitely, if I look right now, the Business Europe made 68 proposals for the new commission how to reduce the red tape for European businesses. That definitely, if you look even this kind of list of different proposals that you even maybe beforehand not recognized, which kind of regulations there are already in place, that definitely I think we have over-regulated our life. I'm definitely on that side, that we do not need more regulation, we need less regulations also here in Europe.
Fully agreed on that one as well. And when I found out about the AI Act that's coming up, I was honestly in shock. I mean, it's like you don't even have companies to regulate, and you're putting a regulation in place. And like it's way too early to do that. Some regulation is always necessary, right? But I'm also a firm believer that Europe should liberalize the markets a lot more. And originally it was a trade union, right? And that's massive bonus for the entire market. But yeah, we need to make sure as Europe that we keep our internal environment competitive and won't just push all the industries outside of Europe, because it's just easier to do business there. Standardization also always inhibits innovation. So you need to re-improve for innovation as well, not just overly standardized.
And I think there are also, on the other hand, and where I also see concerns that especially after the COVID, after the Russian invasion, to keep this internal market really consistent and together. Because I've been the firm believer when we started what I described as Estonian market liberalization process. I've never done this just as a Estonian market. I think I repeatedly also received a lot of critics about that at home. I never built the Estonian power market as a separate, isolated island. Definitely, I've always been the key believer that in Europe we have a common grid, one grid from Gibraltar to the North Cap, and we have a common market from Gibraltar to the North Cap. So this is something which really give the best prices for all consumers all over the Europe, and give also the best energy resilience. As we right now talk a lot about European defense capabilities, exactly the energy security is very important part of that. And we never can build sufficient just country by country. I think exactly the same applies for the energy. That I really hope that we can keep this Europe energy market project together. That not this kind of protectionist movement what we see here and there. That basically we do it just for our own. That is very much short focus actions that this is something what we get rid of. And definitely I very much like to support the European Commission really to act bold and keep internal energy market all together without this kind of exemptions here and there, even cut more those exemptions away.
We're stronger together.
We're stronger together, exactly. Never alone.
Taavi, I've noticed we're coming up on time, so I just have maybe one or two more questions.
Yeah, please.
I also noticed that you are a partner at a clean tech venture firm focusing on Northern Europe called 2C Ventures.
Yes.
This might be a little bit of a controversial question. Do you think that, let's say, somebody who was building a company in the geo space, do you think that's a venture sort of scale opportunity in 2025?
Which space? Please repeat. I not catch.
So if you're building software, maybe to manage geos, do you think that's a venture backable company or not?
Yeah, definitely. I think Soldera is a really good case here. I think Denver and his team are really doing great. I definitely see that there are huge opportunity to automate and use also the AI tools to make geo trading over the borders much easier for both for traders or for producers and for consumers. Definitely, I see there a huge opportunity and maybe even beyond Europe, also basically the global wise to even do more this kind of guarantees of origin type of definitely not under European regulation, but all which relates labeling of the renewable energy sourcing and really keep the confidence of the consumers that they know that which kind of energy from which sources they are really consumed. Yeah, definitely. I see this great opportunity, and especially if we talk about further automatization and use of AI for that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And speaking of Europe or outside Europe, we are in the process of going currently to Sweden, UK, US, India, and we're very interested in Latin America as well. So if you're anywhere in Europe or those other countries I mentioned, and especially if you have a renewable energy park or plant, solar, wind installations, even hydro, doesn't matter. We'd love to talk and reach out to us and we'll help.
Biogas and the green hydrogen and all this might be also, I think, the huge interest of you.
Yes, it actually is. But I can't put out too many messages at the same time.
All right. Well, I think that's a natural stop. So thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot personally.
Me too.
Have a nice day.